need love that you put me through. Love me over and over again, and over and over. You're more than a friend. I just wanna be close to you. If there's anything I can do, I just wanna be close to you.
the reason why I'm trying to hide. As for all the things you taught me, it sends my future into clearer dimensions. You never know how much you hurt me. Stay a minute, can't you see that I wanna fall from the stars straight into your arms? I feel ya. I hope you comprehend.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Michael here from partspro.ph. Today is Saturday, September 12th. It's about 5:15 in the afternoon. Welcome to the Partspro podcast, which is what we're calling Mic Check. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. There's roughly about 40 of you guys that's tuning in. Sorry for the little bit of delay. We had a little technical difficulty with one of the mics. So shout out to Mr. Robert Tan's IT. Thank you for assisting us to make sure that everything is up and running. Let's do a quick recap. Last week, we talked with Mr. Sam YG, and also si Papi Ramon Bautista. We talked about how to be a car guy. Thank you guys so much. That was such an amazing episode. I genuinely had a great time because there's still a lot for me to learn here in the Philippines about the car culture and the things that mga kilos ng galawing ideal guy, kung mga sabi nga ni Mr. JDM number one. And we're going to continue with everything today to sort of talk about what the 90s car scene was like here in the Philippines. Now, for me, in the 90s, I was in the States. I really didn't come home in the Philippines. I think it was about 1998 was the first time that I really came back since we left as a child. So I'm really excited about today because for me, again, the 90s was a really important time, at least for me, because I think it really paved the way for what ended up happening in today's car culture. But before we get into that, if you're not subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe to the Parts Pro YouTube channel. We've got a lot of amazing content that we're going to be bringing to you guys in the next few weeks. In the past couple sort of weeks, we've uploaded the review on the Ford Territory. We're also going to be doing a review on the Radical cars that we're going to go up to Clark for. I'm really, really super excited about that. Yeah, also don't forget, to check out the parts of Instagram and things like that. We're gonna start doing a lot of posts and some sort of promos on the stories and the My Day on Facebook. But before we go any further, I want to go ahead and introduce my very, very special co-host today. He is one of the founding members of the Legends of the 90s, the founding member, or the founding founder of the Super Sprints and also Grupo Toyota, Mr. Robert Han. Hello. Hello,
Hey
Mr.
everybody,
Tan.
hi.
Kamusta po?
Thanks for having us and welcome to your show.
thank, thank you for spending your Saturday with us. I know this is going to be really, really fun. Every single time that we meet, you're very close to the parts of our family. Every time we hang out, there's always nothing but laughs and about cars. So I'm super excited that you're here with us tonight because I know you also have a lot of experience from the 90s na pwede mong i-share sa amin na mga
Well,
kalokohan na ginagawa mo noon.
yeah. Well, my IT is right here, and I can't really say so much.
Baka putulin bigla yung ano mo.
Bigla magkaroon ng
Technical glitch.
And then one of our guests today, Mr. Tan, Robert, pwede mong i-introduce our guest today, si one of your co-founders for the Legends of the 90s. So, Robert?
I'd like to introduce our co-founder in Legends of the 90s, Mr. Aurick Go.
Hello. Hi. Yeah. So, I think among the guys here, ako yung youngest. Pero
Baby of the bunch.
no, like I'm here to present like another side of the spectrum kasi while these guys were out doing it, I mean living the 90s car culture life, I was just about to get into it, like I was still playing with the toy cars and Gran Turismo and stuff like that. Pero it eventually ended up with me actually taking up a 90s project of my own. So I'm looking forward to hearing everyone's stories tonight.
Yeah, and honestly, one of the reasons why we wanted you here, Al, was because even though you and I sort of can relate with each other that, back in the 90s, everybody was doing it. You and I were sort of looking up to them and playing, the video games and things like that. But you also have a lot of experience with your 90s cars. You're
Oh yeah.
extremely not knowledgeable about, cars in the 90s and things like that. So from that standpoint, there's a lot that I want to hear from you as well, because I know that you are full of knowledge. Just like, of course, our other special guest tonight,
Yep.
Mr. Michael Rojas, who has just tons and tons of knowledge from the 90s that he can definitely share with us, because he's really sort of lived it all, and was really sort of one of the guys that really sort of cultivated the 90s car culture here in the Philippines. So welcome, Mick. Thank you for spending your Saturday with us again.
No problem. So hopefully like last time, hopefully everyone enjoyed.
Yes,
All the
I know they
kwento,
will.
All the side kwento, all the behind the scenes of the 90s.
Yes. And if you guys are ready let's go ahead and sort of get started. Now, in the 90s, especially for me in the US, there was a lot of things that were happening. Jordan hip hop culture, really sort of was booming. What was like the situation here in the Philippines was like back in the 90s, and how did that influence sort of the cars that were here and also the cars that were coming here?
Ah. Sige. Well, I guess the 90s, I'll start. Because I guess a little with a backstory. Before 1989, the only car manufacturer in the Philippines operating, well, making two na pala. There were two. Nissan was one of them, and Mitsubishi was the other. But even before Nissan came in, there was a time that only Mitsubishi was producing cars in the Philippines. So in the 80s, there was no choice. I mean, if you wanted a brand new car, your choice was either a Lancer or a Galant. That was pretty much it. So
GL.
then sometime in 86 maybe, 87, I can't remember the exact year, Nissan came in with the Stanza and the Pulsar. So that was basically it. If you wanted a brand new car, your choices were the Lancer, the Galant, then the Nissan Stanza and the Pulsar. Even after a few years, like a Pulsar. But that was it. So when the 90s came in, when Toyota came back in 1989, so there was a boom. I mean, there was a boom in the Philippine automotive industry, no? Not just because people were hungry. People were hungry for new cars.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened? Toyota came in with the AE92, and everybody wanted one. So because of that, Mitsubishi also released their Lancer, the new Lancer at that time. So the new Lancer was the what do you call? Well,
I think the Singkit, no?
the
first
Singkit. They call it the Singkit. Yeah, but
Yeah, the
yeah. So
Singkit.
yon. Tapos aside from that, Nissan came out now with the 89. Yeah, with the B12 Sentra.
one.
So yun, and there was a war na. You could say there was a war. They were competing, no? So like the Sentra in the 90 yata, 1991, for them to get, kasi everybody wanted a Corolla, di ba? The lines for a Corolla were massive. So
You
if you
get
wanted
one?
yeah, I had one, but if you wanted an AE92, siguro gray market eh. The price parang ngayon with the Jimny or whatever
Yeah.
car, no? So the MSRP of the Corolla was 333,000 if I'm not mistaken, for a GL, the 1.6. Tapos if you wanted it now, you could buy from the gray market, from the black market, siguro mga 380, 370, 380. So ganun katindi nun. Tapos Nissan naman came out with the power, they started with the power. Kasi the Corolla didn't have anything power. Walang power steering, walang power window, wala. Then Nissan came out with the all-power Sentra. Power steering, power windows. Talagang it was a
ye-
war.
mga what year to MicMic when they came out with the Nissan Sentra na power everything?
91 maybe. B12, ano pa yun eh, B12 pa yun eh. B12 Sentra pa yun. Yeah.
Were they
The boxy Sentra.
16 valves already?
Ha?
Were they 16 valves already then?
No, 12 valve. The
12
Sentra
pa
was
lang.
12 valve. Yeah. Yeah.
So naging connotation for the first 92s were the 16 valves.
Yes, 16 valve. Kasi nga, because of the 16 valve engine.
Pero yung car culture no 90s, Mick, with the early 90s, dahil your choices of cars were very limited. So ano mga ginagawa ng mga guys to set up their cars?
Like the Corolla, from the dealer, they were so people were so gutom nga kasi nga, I mean, wow, new car, new Corolla. Sometimes the dealer would sell you all the stuff, diba? They would sell TRD parts, they would sell like from the dealer dati, remember you could get the TRD quick shift, you could get the TRD wheels. Yun, ganon. I mean, they were really spending on the cars. Tapos like the 80s, they were turning it into what it looked like in Japan. So that's why there were emblems. They were selling SE Limited or They were selling the GT Twin Cam 16 emblem. They were selling the door decals, yung the decals on the door that says 16 valve EFI, whatever, mga ganun. They were putting the Corolla. At back then, one of the uso things was the chin spoiler of the GT. So there was a Corolla GT in Japan, the 4-door version, which had the 4AG twin cam. So they had that had the chin spoiler. So they were bringing in that chin spoiler, and they were putting it on the car. So they were making it also like what it was, like what it is in Japan back then.
So even
the chrome
noon,
we were talking about it earlier, the chrome in
Yeah.
the door. They had the doors kasi the door handles of the Japanese had the chrome strip. So they were putting the chrome strip.
so even back then, to sort of JDM find your car was
Yeah.
was a thing now.
Yeah.
To get parts from Japan
Yeah,
and try to get your car to convert to what it was
Yeah.
over in Japan.
From the 80s pa, it was like that.
From the 80s
From
pa,
the
ganun
80s,
na.
it was like that. Then it carried over to the 90s.
Mm.
Pack is
No.
evil nga, kumbaga.
You can't. It's always the grass is greener on the other
Yes,
side.
yes.
You always want
Kasi-
what you can't have.
And kasi
Yeah.
nga, back then, everybody had the 16 valve. Well, they call it the 16 valve, but AE92, everybody had one. Like, siguro, in our street alone, siguro, dati, siguro, the whole street had one. Each house had one. It was that popular.
So you want to do
I
things
mean-
to make your car stand out
Yeah.
noon pa.
So that's why you wanted to fix it up, to change it up also.
Yeah.
And yan, at that time also, it was also the start siguro of car audio back then.
Yeah.
Mm.
Kasi the Corolla, the EE92 had the, well, I don't want to say naman crappy, but sige na nga crappy. It had the crappy Fujitsu 10 na OEM radio.
Yeah.
As in, pangit talaga. As in, like, isa lang yung speaker, ganon. Yung ganon tipo ba?
Isa lang ang speaker.
AM, FM,
It
ganyan.
was pangit. It was underneath the dashboard.
Ang speaker.
Well, the cassette was underneath the dashboard.
Yeah.
Tapos the tuner, dalawang piraso pa siya. The tuner was on the top. Tapos the cassette was in the bottom. In the double din. So, naging single din lang.
Now,
So,
what was
yun.
motorsports like noon? Like, kasi, like I said, I was never really around in the 90s dito sa Pilipinas. So what was like the motorsports and the nightlife dito in the 90s? I mean, was there a lot of, because for me, every time you sort of think nightlife and cars, you kind of think of that opening scene in the Fast and the Furious where, they were sort of having a rave in the middle of a parking lot. I mean, what was it like here in the Philippines, at that time with the guys, the girls, the partying and kind of things like that?
Still, the nightlife, I wasn't so familiar with, but the motorsport scene, yes. Because the 90s was the start of, the return of circuit racing into the Philippines. So there was also a motorsports boom. So it was the start of circuit racing. So Subic opened, so the Subic Raceway opened in, 94? 95. Then a year later was BRC.
But who started? Sorry, question. When Subic opened, what races were held then?
It started with production. Dalawa. There were two classes: Super Saloon and production. The production, it had to be a production car, locally produced car.
Everything stock aside from what? What were
Yes, everything stock aside from roll cage.
Oh,
And exhaust pwede. Yeah, I can't remember. Exhaust and roll cage. Yun. Tapos to the Super Saloon, the early days, kasi nga wala pang mga race car na dumadating noon, they were converting rally cars, their old rally cars to run
A race car.
to run circuit. So like the Tuasons were using their 240 RS, they made it into a circuit car. Their Nissan 240 RS, they turned it into the rally car, they turned it into a circuit car, no? So a lot were using their old rally cars to race Super Saloon. Yan. That was a
And
start.
before that,
No
everybody
restrictions
really
at all.
was doing rally.
Yeah, Super Saloon noon, wala pang restriction. Bring best bakal yata, I can't remember. Parang best bakal noon.
That would be
The restrictions came in when the Hondas came in.
Mm.
Kasi when the Hondas
Nako.
came in, it was blowing the field away. So what happened was that they decided to put, well, kasi ano na rin naging budget wars na rin naging
Yes.
money war na rin. So people were some like what they were doing is they were doing B16A yun 'di ba, the Honda B16A.
Yes.
They were
Mhm.
stroking the engine using that back then the most common was the spoon B18 1800 conversion. So everybody was starting going 1800 ganyan. So suddenly they decided to level the playing field para hindi maging money is no object They put a restrictor on the car. So they put parang a hole na maliit lang. I can't remember how big, 34 millimeter ba, 30, something like that na butas lang. So that was the only air you could run into your to your intake manifold. They put a restrictor.
So back in the day pala yung mga Honda yung namimigay ng plus, hindi yung nanghihingi.
Kasi back then naman when the Hondas came in, kasi the first Hondas came in when they bought X-race cars from Japan.
Yeah.
So dumating EF, the start was EF9s from Japan. Tapos syempre pag may EF ka na noon, tapos ang kalaban mo was like what? A Lancer box type, for example, 'di ba na malalampaso yung Lancer box type. Then
Easy.
everybody started buying Hondas to race.
So noon, Mick, yung mga EF, walang locally made. Back
There
then,
was
the
a
circuit
locally
guys.
made EF with the
Okay.
1200 engine in 91 yata.
Yeah, kasabay ng 92s.
Yeah, people car. Kasi nga, Honda wanted to come into the Philippines. But back then, the only way you could enter the Philippine market was through the people car program. So
Okay.
you had to make a car na 1200 lang, maximum of 1200 cc. And there was a price point. You had to attain a certain price point. I can't remember the exact price point, but it had to be a certain price point. So the companies that joined that one was Kia with the Pride, then Honda with the Civic. Kaya for the Civic to attain that price point, it was really stripped down. Walang laman yung Civic na yun. It was really hubad na hubad. Even yata radyo, wala yun So, talagang hubad na hubad.
Yeah.
No,
So,
kaya
bumpers were,
So kaya siguro pinangalan ng PH12 yung makina because it's really for our market.
Well, yeah, kasi it was a 1200 specific for the Philippines.
Yeah, kasi in sa US, if I'm not mistaken, the smallest you can get in the EF were a 1.5, the D15.
D15.
Yeah, the D15. Outside
Well,
of that,
in
there
Japan,
really
you could
wasn't
get a
anything else.
1.3 back then, but this was the 1200.
So yung 1200 dito lang talaga sa Pilipinas.
Yes. That's why it's a PH12.
Now with the Toyotas naman at that time, what sort of cars were iconic in that 90s period? Since we're talking about sort of Hondas and stuff like that. On the Toyota side, the Corolla.
The Corolla. The Corolla was outselling everybody. I remember back then, I mean, ito mga behind the scenes lang back then. I remember when we were doing the wheels for the EE92, the Corolla, the 1.6 GL. I had 5 casting machines on one. I had 5 molds of that wheel on 5 casting machines to meet the demand of Toyota.
Ganun kadami.
Ganun kadami, yeah.
Wow.
So, if you siguro in terms of number of wheels, that's siguro maybe easily 15,000 wheels a month. So, divide that by 5. That's 3,000 Corollas they were producing of just the 1600. Wala pa yung XL.
And that was just for the Philippine market.
That was just for the Philippine market.
Wow. Grabe.
Ganong kadaming Corolla.
These are Corollas, the AE92s?
Yes. EE90, AE92. The EE90 was the XL 1300. Then eventually, nagkaroon ng XL 5-speed, then the GL.
Ayos. Now, Robert, yung mga time na yan, anong mga ana mo? Were you playing with cars already? Kasi kami ni PlayStation pa lang kami niyan.
Oh, yeah. PlayStation kid.
Mahilig na ako noon, but I was more on the drinking scene then
The what?
The drinking scene.
The drinking scene.
So, ang mas kabisado ko yung mga gimikan.
Ah. So saan ang gimmickan?
Yeah, si Robert makakasagot
Yan.
yan.
Dami.
Yeah.
In Makati, it's Makati Ave. Marias, na normal. Siyempre, there's Green Hills, Annapolis, ganon. Depende kasi where you're from and where you want to make kalat.
Mm.
You wanna make that.
Diba dati, if you wanted to see nice cars, dumaan ka sa Venecia, di ba? Nakaparado
Yes,
sa labas. Yan.
Yeah,
If
mga
I
exotic,
remember.
nandun. Na exotic
Tapos
nandun
Mars.
sa labas. Yeah, Mars. Yan, Mars. Kabisado namin ng IT ko yan.
Talaga.
I don't know.
Thank you, IT.
Pero
Shout out to
days
IT.
na walang barilan. Now, that's the difference now with the car scene now eh. You don't know sino mga daming kalokohan. So, that was why, for me, that was why ibang 90s era, ng panahon ng car, ng mga pagdating sa mga auto.
Yeah.
Say for me, I think the 90s really paved the way for what a lot of us car guys, or at least I would consider car guys now. Say without the cars of the 90s,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have the kind of culture, the kind of, sort of the JDM culture that exists today. So for the 90s, what sort of cars would you think are truly iconic back then? I'll say for me, I was a Honda kid. I mean, the dream was, my first car was an EF. Then I had an EG, and the dream was always been to own a white EK9, a championship white EK9. That, for me, that was always the dream. But what about for you guys? What were the standout cars in the 90s for you guys?
Sige, ako muna.
Go ahead.
Basta definitely the Honda EG-EK.
Yeah. Hondas are up there.
Ano yan? Worldwide yan.
What?
No,
You guys heard
whether
it.
you like it or not, like, dude, Hondas are okay. They're good cars. Just some people, diba? But
They are naman talaga.
Pero
they're good cars.
They are.
I mean, whether you like it or not, the 90s wouldn't be the 90s without the Honda EG
That's true.
and EK.
That's true.
And sama mo na yung Integra because isang platform lang naman yan eh.
Yeah,
Oh, no,
DC2.
EK and the DC2.
DC2 is
Yan.
magnificent.
Yeah, for me, without the Honda, I think the car scene of today and what a lot of guys are doing now would have never existed. I mean, you can laugh at the Honda boys all you want, but at one point, I think everybody was
Then
a
of
Honda
course,
boy.
the other cars rin, no? The Evos, ganyan.
Mhm.
Nandun naman, they were all there. Diba? The Supra, RX-7, Evo,
And
GC8. They're all there. Galant, VR4, they're all. Pero I guess everybody will. I mean, it won't be the 90s without the Honda, the EG, EK, and the DC.
let's put it this way. Whether we admit it or not,
Yeah.
everybody wanted to own a Honda.
I'll admit, I own the Honda.
A lot of people will not admit it, but
I had two Hondas.
Yeah, for me, the Hondas were the best. And until today, I mean, I still have a Honda. And that was I don't think I'll ever sell mine.
Can't go wrong.
Yeah,
I
VTEC
built
kicks in, yo.
I built the EK4 the hard way. I bought a local VTI. Then I turned it into an EK4 sedan with the twin cam 16 with the B16A. Tapos I bought one of the engines of the Ramirez's, the Stroker 1800. Then we put it there. I had Mieda, yung tuner nila of Tracy Sports to tune it.
wow.
So I had that. I had the Honda EK4 red. A red Honda EK4 4-door.
Tuned by Tracy's Motorsport.
Yeah, in
Wow.
Japan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kasi si Mieda works for Tracy. Ito ba may mga backstory pa yan with Subic eh. Kasi si Gono of Autoplus bought also a Honda EG, brand new race car from Tracy. Tapos, I remember, they were so secretive. Secret. Di nila alam, ano laman yan. Tapos, Mieda goes, why so secret? I built that in Japan. Sabi niya. I worked for Tracy in Japan. Kasi Mieda kasi was working for Ramirez back then. So, I don't understand why secret because I saw that engine being built. Anyway.
We have a question specifically to, for you. This is by Senan Alejandro. What is your favorite Korean car from the 90s?
Straight up, I'll tell you, they're all pieces of shit in the 90s. Okay? So I'll tell you my experience. We bought a Hyundai H100, brand new, right?
At the
So
van?
it's the predecessor to the High Ace, diba?
Okay.
Okay.
And I
Ano
kid
ba
you
eh?
not.
Ah,
Yeah, the
Van, the
H100,
van.
the van, right?
mhm.
So,
Grace.
as a kid, it's like, oh, it's a van. Oh, this must be nice. Ganyan, it's brand new, right? So it should work, right? Pero pare, on the way to school, nag-overheat, tinirikan kami in the middle of EDSA. Dude, most fucking annoying car, I swear.
How old was the car then?
This
Brand
was
new?
1995 or 1996.
No,
I'm
the car
not
was
mistaken.
relatively new.
It's
Brand new yun.
new.
Man. Yeah. You have
Brand
to
new
buy it pa from
H100.
Hyundai was being sold by Proton then, di ba?
Yes, exactly,
People's
exactly.
Proton.
Yeah.
Pero
In
what
hindsight,
cars?
we should have just taken the Proton wire that they were offering us because that's basically a Lancer, right? But my dad went with the H100. Grabe. I swear that thing's a piece of shit. I hate it with a burning passion.
What
Hyundai
cars were
Grace. di
Koreans
ba?
making back then?
Dude, they were making, I don't know
The
what they were
Excel.
making.
The Hyundai Excel. Pony.
They had a Daewoo, the Daewoo Racer.
Racer.
Daewoo,
yeah.
I remember Daewoo.
Yeah.
Daewoos were craps.
Pero Daewoo pare, ano yun eh? Opel yun. Opel Kadett yun. Yeah.
Ah.
Kahit pa paano.
Kahit pa paano may cred yun. Opel yun.
Yeah. Like the trauma is so bad na you mention a Korean car to my dad, no matter how much their quality is improved and yada yada. It's like, dude, no, hands off. We're not buying Korean anymore.
Pero
Roll
that,
dice.
yeah, to be fair, that was the early days of Korean
Yeah,
cars.
yeah.
Yeah, Korean cars
So,
have come a long way.
They have. Like, I'll
Yeah.
give them that.
Yeah, Korean cars have come a long way.
But in the 90s, grabe.
yeah.
Ke horror.
They were just terrible. Grabe.
Yeah. So, yeah.
No,
Ano
so
pa?
like dito sa Pilipinas, you had the 8092s to 101s. They were
Yeah.
hugely popular.
Yes.
Then obviously the Civic with the EF, EK.
Yes.
Now let's talk about the Evo 5 because that was for me, that was an important car that came out there. I think that was one of the ones that really started sort of the duel between Mitsubishi and Subaru, and really influenced a lot towards the rally racing. I mean, how important was that car, for the Philippine car culture, if it even existed here?
Yeah, it was brought in by Mitsubishi. The 4 and the 5 were both brought in by Mitsubishi.
And they both had the RS and the GSR versions,
Yeah.
right?
No GSR, only RS.
Only
Ah,
the
RS lang.
Only RS, yeah. It was they had to buy it through Rally Art Hong Kong. So it was
Okay.
left-hand drive, it was an RS, then the aircon was in the trunk. If you wanted the aircon, you had to install it yourself. It was in the trunk, in a box.
Why?
Yeah.
So
Pero
you had to
those-
do a DIY kung
Yeah.
gusto mo
Kasi
magka-aircon
it was
nun.
meant to be a rally car. Eh.
Yeah,
Ah.
RS. Yeah.
They bought it from Rally Art of Hong Kong to be tapos Mitsubishi brought it in. It was pare ang daming papeles yun to buy that. You had to sign a piece of paper that said, when you buy this car, it's up to you. There's no warranty whatsoever. Once you sign, when you get that of the showroom, it's yours and we have nothing to do with that car anymore. It was that, But they
Hugas
sold
ka
it. But they sold it locally. Yeah. The Evo 4 and the 5. The 5 pa was 2 batches yata.
Nice.
Grabe, those fives that were locally released, their prices now.
Yeah.
Presyong ginto,
Kasi
pare.
those are all left-hand drive and those were
Yeah.
all sourced from Rally Art.
Grabe. Grabe mga presyo ngayon.
Yung mga Evo 4 and 5 na yun.
Yeah.
But
Pero
the
was-
GC8s, Mick,
The
na
GC8s
lumabas
then-
locally, did they hold?
Yeah.
How are their prices now?
I can't, hindi ko masyado na familiar but mas marami kasing GC8s eh. GC8s, 3 batches yan eh.
Yeah.
GC8s came out 3 batches of 10.
Oh.
Plus the 3 units pa that came in during the motor show. So that there was the first one, the blue one, eventually went to Jesus Salas, was a real WRX. Then there was a red wagon that went to one of the employees of Columbian, si Tiny. Then there was a green na 1600 all-wheel drive that went to the Barretos of Signet, na GC8.
Yeah.
Yan. The green Signet car eventually went to Norman Artificio. Then we converted it into a WRX with a WRX motor.
Mukhang sinundanomic yung mga GC8 na yan.
Kaya
Ilan natago mo?
si Kiko Oreta, si Kiko Oreta, he had one also.
Oo.
Then I also had one, pero mine was I got mine in 99 na yata eh. Yeah, in 99 I got one GC8 STI-RA.
Oh.
Version 2.
Wait.
It was an RA, but it was right-hand drive, so Mieda sold me left-hand drive rally car shell na Pro Drive. Tapos I built the car using that left-hand drive shell. Linipat ko lahat yung parts ng RA to that
Nasaan na
left-hand
yun,
drive
Mick?
shell.
Where's that car now?
Punta kay
Somewhere
Danby.
here. It's si WHF 482. So
Oh my
somewhere.
Oh.
Ito yung dumaan kay Danby, Mick? Hindi.
Yes, yung dumaan kay Danby.
So
But
nakimits na siya.
unfortunately, the engine is no longer the original engine. So I don't know what happened to the original engine, but the original engine of that was also Mieda.
Well,
wow.
it's a Subaru. Go figure.
Yeah,
Hindi,
there's,
matibay yun pa. Si Mieda kasi eventually worked for Toshio Arai of Subaru. Yeah, so he was the
Toshiora, yeah.
chief engineer of Toshio Arai for SWRT, Subaru World Rally.
Yeah.
So that's why we had access to these cars.
grabe to have access to that kind of car
At one
then.
point in time, I owned the Richard Burns car, which I regret selling.
Wow!
Oh my god.
Oh!
It had the 555 na binura lang ng spray paint. I sold it because I needed money to build that RA.
Oh my god.
Wow.
And it was hard to use kasi it had the power band was so peaky. I mean,
That was a dog box then too, right?
The power kicked in at 5 grand RPM. Talagang wala.
Ooh.
Sa baba, wala. You had to turn on the anti-lag if you wanted to use it. But hindi ko magamit. So that
Crazy.
car, I sold it to Robbie Hermoso. Then Robbie Hermoso sold it to, I don't know, but now it's with, what's his name?
Which one? The RA?
No,
The
the
Richard Burns car.
rally car, the Richard Burns. 1995 Safari Rally car. It was the 1995 Safari Rally car of Richard Burns. So
Wow.
it
That's
had
crazy
the
that
mga
you had those two
scrutineer
cars.
stickers.
I mean, to have the RA and then to have the Richard Burns car.
Alam
That's
ni
amazing.
Edgen knows where the car is now. So si Robert knows Edgen. So Edgen knows where the car is now. I can't
Your RA
remember.
will surface. I mean, it went to our...
Yeah, the RA I saw again recently because of Danby. So,
Yeah.
Mm.
And it went to a friend, pupunta sa Legends yun.
yeah.
I think. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
The RA.
Pero
Tata natin
I
yung
think
kotse.
I
at
wanna
one
see
point
that.
in its life, nabaha yun eh. So I think the original engine got flooded. That's why wala na yung original engine niya. So it's no longer with the original engine. Sayang, the original engine nun had forged internals because of Mieda. Then it had the Mieda tuned packs also.
They're saying that the cars with
They're saying it's
Keanu
with Keanu.
Dominado.
Yes. Naki-dominado, yes. You're right.
okay.
Yes.
The family.
Oh.
You're right. Sino nagsabi?
Yeah, we have two
Yes,
sources,
yes,
si
yes.
Edgen and si Franz. Pretty
Yes.
reliable.
Yeah,
Then
Edgen
Dominic
knows.
Cuesta
Yeah,
also said Kenneth, yeah. Keanu Dominado.
Edgen knows where the car went.
Yeah,
Kaya
me too.
yun, naka-ano yun. When I had that car, it had pa the roll cage had pa the Safari Rally scrutineer sticker.
That's crazy to have those two cars. I mean, from a
Oh,
Subaru guy,
yeah, I
that's
saw
huge.
that car, yeah.
Yeah. So it was blue, then they just spray painted over the 555 logos.
Mm.
I had that for a few years, for a couple of years. We bought that in the auction in Subaru. Well, that came in locally. Ginamit pa yon nila for rallying locally for a time. Then I bought it after being used as a rally car here for a year yata.
No,
Then
curious.
sold it to me.
Sorry to cut you off, Mick, but since we're sort of talking about iconic cars in and back in the 90s. I'd like to ask each one of you guys. Let's say name top 5 cars that were truly iconic in the 90s that really changed the way we all look at cars today.
Locally,
Locally, internationally, I mean, just top cars, top 5 cars, your top 5 cars back then.
Yeah, sila muna. Si Robert.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll
kayo
start.
muna.
for
Kayo
me,
muna. Kasi na monopolize ko na yung kwentuhan.
it's so fun to learn. I mean, I've been
Yeah.
gathering info from you, which it's new information for me. Well, for me, the iconic cars, the basic icons, the Supra, the NSX,
Yes.
the RX-7. Well, with the Nissans, mas gusto ko yung R32 eh.
Yes.
Oh yeah, no, I'm with you there.
Actually, if you talk about
R32.
90s, R32.
R32.
32 over 33?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, 32 ako. And then,
32.
McLaren F1.
Oh yeah,
Those
definitely.
are all
Yung
nice
five ko.
picks, actually. Yeah.
And those are really that would be a nice garage.
But
Yeah.
guys, I mean, have you heard about the new one, the T50?
Yung bagong
Yes.
gawa ni Gordon Murray.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Gordon
Murray,
Murray
yeah.
says na ang
Gordon
dami daw
Murray.
niyang mali dun sa F1.
Yes.
Yes.
Or madami naman siyang mali na dun.
Sa lagay na yun, marami pang mali ha.
That's an incredible car. Can't wait to see what that is
Yeah.
actually going to look like. That should be exciting. Ikaw, Ao, top 5 cars from
Top
the 90s.
5. Oh wait, it's on the screen. I see it. RX-7 is definitely number 1. Like you can bash on the rotary as much as you want. Like dude, at this point I don't care. Pinanindigan ko na. It's in my garage. So that's really the car that's stuck for me. And then another, if there's something to complement the McLaren F1, you guys, I mean, only the car guys that really know their stuff probably know this. It's the Bugatti EB110.
Yeah.
Oh, that
A lot of
thing
people
is
forget
beautiful.
about that
Yeah.
car.
No, long before the Veyron, there was the EB110.
Yes.
Grave. And I think, si Robert also mentioned the R32. The 90s won't be the same without the Skyline GTR. 'Cause
Yes.
When people say Godzilla, it's the R32.
Yes, it's the R32.
It's not the 34.
Yeah.
It's the 32. It's the one that
Yep.
demolished yung sa Australian touring car.
Yes.
Ah,
GTC, diba? What else? The NSX. The NSX was, kumbaga, yung proof ng Honda, yung proof that you could make a midship car reliable. Because at the time, you had Ferraris and Lamborghinis, and
Mhm.
Nah.
everyone knows they're so cumbersome to drive, diba? Whereas
Yep.
you drive an NSX, I was fortunate enough to be able to drive an NSX, yung kay JP Carino. That thing drove like an Accord. They weren't kidding. It really,
Yeah.
yung quality that they put into the car, it drives like a normal car, even though, and
It
then
drives
you
like
can
a
drive it
Honda.
anywhere.
Yeah.
Ang ganda
Yeah.
ng greenhouse.
It is a Honda, di ba?
Right.
Yeah. That was a beautiful car, and lalo na it has the heritage. It has the input of Ayrton Senna pa, di ba?
Hmm.
So it really has that going for it. And even Gordon Murray would mention that the NSX is one of his inspirations for the McLaren F1, diba? So they looked at the NSX in terms of quality and yung how it was packaged before building the F1. So yeah, I think how many cars is that? 4?
Yeah, I think you're at 4.
So yeah, let's round it out with the 5th one. Maybe let's go off-roader naman. Like here, you cannot beat an LC80. Toyota Land Cruiser LC80. Like,
Yep.
even till now, you bring it anywhere, all the overland off-road guys still use it, and it will school any new pickup or whatever, goes anywhere. The thing is crazy.
And the prices reflect on that too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, they
It's still
hold
quite
value at
expensive
above
now.
$1 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's holding,
Grabe.
it's holding its value.
Yeah.
Solid talaga LC80.
What about you, Mick? Top
Sige,
5.
mix, local and imported. So, again, as I said, top 5. Most of them naman, they said also, but the Honda Civics, yan.
Yeah.
Civic Integra family, EG, EKDC2. Both non-Type R and Type R. Of course, the Corolla, small body AE92, big body AE100. Let's just lump it up into one, diba? Kasi basically parang parehas lang naman yan. Tapos, the NSX, the Evo family, particularly the 5,
The 5.
and the R32 GTR siguro. Kasi
I'm curious.
R32, why R32
Yes,
GTR?
yeah.
Because it was the first RB26.
But outside of that, wasn't the 32 and the 33, weren't they very similar?
No, kasi you have to look at the backstory. Because before the R30, the GTR nameplate of Nissan, well, before it was Prince. Kasi the Prince was the one who started the Skyline. It wasn't Nissan. It was the Prince Motor Company, which Nissan bought, di ba? So that GTR nameplate was iconic. Talagang from the Hakusuka, they call it the boxy one. Hako Skyline, the boxy. Tapos the Ken Mary, ganyan. But the GTR nameplate was discontinued for a time, for a long time.
Noong mga DR30 days, wala yon.
Yeah, the DR30 was the RS Turbo, di ba? With the FJ20 engine, di ba? So that was 4-cylinder turbo. Then it came back with the R32. Skyline GTR. So that's why it's iconic because of that. Because it was the first GTR in so many years na nagkaroon ulit. So that's why it will always be the Godzilla. They call it the Godzilla because when they raced in Bathurst, di ba?
Yeah.
They blew the competition away. Walang makadikit sa kanila.
Wala, ubos. No, because at the time they were battling against mga E30s, di ba?
Yeah, Group A racing yon. So they had the mga 635 CSI Group A, ganyan.
Oh,
diba?
right.
Then the E30s, yan.
So
Then
the 32. So if you had to take one, put one in your garage, right? 33, 32, or 34. 32 would be the right pick.
There's always an argument for that.
It's hard to say.
It's hard to say.
The reason, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. The reason why I'm asking, and I was doing a little bit of online stuff, because it's going to hit the 25-year mark.
All right,
in the US. So the other day, actually, it's been a few months now. I was looking at the 33 you could bring into the US now. The 32,
it's legal. 1995.
It's legal.
25
then,
years.
If I'm not mistaken, 2024 you can bring the GT or the R34.
Yeah.
Now, everybody sort of knows the R34 as being Godzilla.
Yeah.
So for me, like I was doing, like, well, what if I do this? Which would be the better car to buy, and that could potentially hold the money better in the future.
You have to answer kasi the question is, are you gonna use it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's say I'll use it because I definitely want to drive it. You can't buy something like that and not drive it. 34.
R34.
34. I think the when it comes to the packaging, the R34 is the most developed, most well packaged, and the RB26 has seen its proper revisions. Like yung mga oil starving issues have been solved with the R34. Pero
looks wise. For me,
subjective hard to say.
Subjective
Kanya-kanyang trip yan.
Kung usapang looks alone, I would actually go with the R33. I love how the R33 looks. And people bash on it like it's like the bastard child of the GTRs, but it actually drives well. Do remember na the R33 GTR was the first production car to lap sub 8 minutes sa Nürburgring.
Is that the 400R?
No, not the 400R. Production model na production model na R33.
Okay.
Yeah, V-Spec tuner. Kaya nga they called it the NUR, di ba?
Yeah, because Skyline has heritage sa Nürburgring. The NUR is for the R34, yung last run-out model niya, final model.
Basta ganito yan eh. If you want to collect something, always get the last or the first. What's the first? Of the RB26s, the R32. What's the last? The R34.
Right.
Because the GTR R35 is no longer a Skyline. It's a Nissan GTR.
Yeah.
So technically, the last Skyline GTR was the R34.
Yep.
Ikaw, Robert, ano mas pinakamaganda din sa tatlo sa'yo? 32, 33, or 34?
To own, I'll get the 34 V-Spec.
Yeah. To own 34.
Yeah.
To own 34. Kasi sa akin, feeling ko parang yung 33 is the best looking. I don't know. Parang mas pogi siya. And then the R32 parang kulang yung sa dating sa looks niya.
For me, if I were to own one, I'd get the later model na R32, yung V-spec na.
Yeah.
Mm.
Pwede.
The earlier ones had yung mga oil starve issues, and you have to replace the oil pumps and shit. So I think they addressed that with the later model V-spec na 32, if I'm not mistaken. Pero yeah, I just really, yung in terms of body proportion, I would take the 32. It drives pretty well too.
The 32. I've never driven. I mean, I want one. I really want one. I want, it's an iconic car. You know, it's one of those things, just like the Supra. You know,
Yeah.
But if you
the
drive the
80.
32 and the 34, malayo.
Really?
The 34 is really, really... Parang ano yan, let's say, the 34, parang you can really daily drive it. The 32, baka hindi pa eh. Maraming ano yung 32,
Too stiff,
maraming...
not comfortable.
Yeah, maraming quirks na you have to live with. The 34.
Yeah. It's the small things eh. Like sa 32, mas primitive pa yung Atesa ETS system nun eh.
Maraming things you have to live with the 32.
Whereas in the 34, it's really refined na talaga. Like they've been building the GTR for a decade, so they know what to do with it. Diba? As a package, the 34 would be better talaga.
Would be the better car out of the three.
Yeah.
Nice. I'm sort of jealous because you guys got to pick your top iconic cars.
Mine
would be,
you.
you know, my first car was the EF9, so I would definitely like to buy one. Again, I think I bought my first car at $500, so I want that. I would like to get that car back. You know, as a kid, I was definitely a Honda boy, so I want an EF9, an NSX. You can't sort of have a 90s garage without the F1. I think that's a hugely important car. Definitely, I don't know if you would consider the F40 sort of a 90s car, because that sort of came out late 80s,
na yan,
early 90s.
Yeah,
but
no.
Either the F40 or the F50, I'd take either one, because that's quite a bit of money. And I think I would finish it off with the RX-7, because you can't beat the way a rotor sounds. I mean, I've seen Al's video, and the way that he has to get to the gas station with the premix and things like that. You know, it's a hassle, but there's also nothing like it.
There's nothing like
that
it.
will ever exist again. So I think it's a really, truly special car. And speaking of the RX-7, I mean, what made you, or what makes really that car iconic? Other than obviously the engine, but you know, what makes that car just different?
Generally, no, like ever since my taste has always been like a two-door coupe. That's always been like the kind of car for me. So I would look at Corvettes. I would look at things like a Toyota Soarer or Lexus SC.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of shape is attractive to me. And for the RX-7 naman, when you look at it, there's no edges. It's very timeless.
Yeah.
I actually had a loaner Mazda 3 in the garage just today. I had to return it. And you look at it side by side, diba? And the RX-7 still looks new. Like, you cannot place it. Like everywhere you go, people will say, "Sir, bagong model ba yan? O anong brand to?" Ganyan. And they hear it's a Mazda, tapos you tell them, 20 anyos na yan. Oh, magugulat sila. Like it's really timeless. Like you hear a bunch of marketing speak about design and yada yada, but few can actually live up to it, just like the RX-7. It still looks beautiful even to this day.
Do they sell that locally?
Not the FD.
The
FD wala.
They didn't sell the FD, pero there were gray market
import,
you know, models. Like that picture of me as a 4-year-old with an RX-7 that was at a gray market car dealer. So there were a few around town, pero considering most of these models were 1993 models, which is the first time they brought a left-hand drive one to the US, and then they brought it back here, sigurado lahat yon had issues. And that's when the reputation started na, it kept overheating and yada yada.
Twin turbo, vacuum
lines and all that jazz. Pero technology's come such a long way, and you know, with good standalone ECU, good turbo, diba? You could make it pretty potent now. So
Lito. Thank you, Lito.
Thank God. Shout out to Bossing Lito Salva. Thank you for keeping our
Si Lito
RX-7
ba ang
running.
nag-ano mo? Kay si Lito.
Yun ang
Yep.
tuner mo?
Yep. No, like, look, we're looking at RX-7s there, like on the left, yung kay Bygone, si Uncle Edwin, and a couple others. All of those, si Lito lahat bumuo. Most of the RX-7s you will see around town, si Lito bumuo.
I know Lito from his 635 pa before.
Oh no, he still has that.
The turbo one.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
still has it. Actually, bagong respray lang nga eh. I think he painted it silver. Ganda,
Ganda
ganda.
rin na yun.
Oh.
Pero yung
Tagal lang nasa-
RX-7, so everything that's here is ano talaga, imported talaga.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these are all
How many
gray market.
how many are here in the Philippines or Manila?
I don't. Well,
Less than 10?
currently,
Yeah.
currently running siguro 10 to 12.
Running. That's the
thereabouts.
key word.
Yeah, running. Because no, there's a few that aren't. No.
Ano
But
yan
they're
eh,
more
kasi,
FPs than FCs.
yeah, sorry. Kasi nga, it's complicated na to ask this question kasi if you say left-hand drive, real left-hand drive cars, siguro less than a handful, maybe.
Yeah.
Pero ang dami kasing dumating na B-plates eh. So, na
Hello,
kinonvert.
B-plate gang.
No, I'm not saying na, no. But marami rin dumating na gano'n. So, it's hard not to justify the numbers.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
true.
To say how many are there, it's hard to say.
B-plates mean that they were converted.
B-plates mean they entered through Port Irene sa Cagayan.
Cagayan.
Valley.
Okay.
Right.
Ah.
So,
So, yeah, more or less,
After-
more
more or
most
less,
likely
yeah, most likely
converted.
converted yan. Like in my case, my car is converted, but the previous owner had the due diligence to actually bring in a half cut from the US
To reconvert.
to convert and put all the US stuff in the car before releasing it and paying for the taxes and stuff.
Mm.
So I get the best of both worlds eh. Kasi my car is a 99 model, meaning it's the most updated one. It's the last.
The last.
Yeah. So yung body harness and all that jazz, it's all sorted, the ABS, yada yada. But I get the left-hand drive from an original US model. So I get the best of both worlds.
Which parts for those things are not cheap now. I mean,
They're
even
not-
the window
wait.
molds.
Yeah, no, aside from not being cheap, they're very, very hard to find.
Hard to come by.
Super hard. Like, I hear stories na, I think a friend of mine was looking for a half cut ng RX-7, like the interior, because it's asymmetric. You need the door
Yeah.
cards and the
Yeah.
dashboard, right? So he was looking for one and he got a lead sa junkyard somewhere in New Jersey, right? And then he tips off a friend there na, hey, may RX-7 doon. Could you please check it out? This was within 3 days. It came as a whole car. When the guy came in,
Kubad na.
Hubad na, and they knew what to pick. Okay? They knew what to get. So wala na.
It's on
gone.
eBay na, doble na presyo.
Oh, diba? Yeah. Grabe. It's
For
super hard.
production-wise, there weren't really that much, right?
How many were made?
Total around the world,
Yeah.
I think, nasa 16,000 units and between 93 to 95 ata, mga 5,000 cars lang in the US. Parang ganon.
No, not that much talaga.
And a bunch of them have already been totaled for sure, di ba? So, it's super, super hard to come by. Pag left-hand drive.
Wow.
True.
Yung mga parts niyan, kahit yung Supra, I have friends here who are dying to finish their Supras here. Hindi manapos-tapos dahil walang pyesa.
Yeah.
Yung A80.
A80.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yun din problema ng Supra, asymmetric yung cockpit. Yung
Yeah.
ano niya.
So
you
since we started na nga talking about the Supras and the RX-7,
Yeah.
we have to mention how those cars came about. Diba? As we were talking kanina behind the scenes. Remember the Japanese had a lot of money in the 80s. They were in a boom. Diba? They were in an economic boom.
Mm-hmm.
So they had money to burn. So they were developing cars na super mahal to develop because they knew that no matter how much we sell these cars, akala nila ganun eh. Like Toyota, Mazda, who else ba? Nissan. They all thought na, hindi matatapos tong boom na to. The bubble, there was no bubble to begin with. Sa kanila. So, they were putting money into all those cars na knowing na, we'll sell this car no matter how much it is, the Japanese will buy it. In the 80s, ganon. So
Yeah.
these cars were the RX-7. So that's why the cars of the 90s were so, it was, you could see the golden era of Japanese performance.
True.
Because they had money to burn in the 80s. So what were those cars? The Evos, the RX-7s, the Supra,
3000 GT.
3000
3000
GT,
GT.
and
That's
the
an
mga,
awesome car.
the Lexus. Di ba yung mga Lexus na yan? They
Yeah.
were putting money into that. So yung mga, like the Soarer, they were building Grand Coupes in Japan.
Diba?
Di ba?
Yeah.
Not just the performance cars, the Grand Coupes, di ba? Mga Chaser, Soarer, Soarer, and
Lexus
There were-
SC.
Lexus SC, Soarer, di ba? They're putting money into those cars. Tapos yung Nissan had the Leopard, which is the Infinity.
Oh yeah, yung
Yeah,
Leopard.
yeah. So, tapos Mitsubishi, di ba? They had the Debonair, di ba? 3000
Ooh.
GT, di ba? So, ganun. They're putting money into those cars. That's why ang daming magandang Japanese cars of the 90s. Because they thought that there was no bubble to begin with. Hindi mauubos tong hindi mauubos tong wealth ng Japan, di ba? Yung
Will
Di
they
ba, when
ever
you
do
go
that
to-
again, Mick? Sa tingin mo?
Ah?
Can they ever do that again? Because like right now, it seems like the Japanese cars that are coming out are not as exciting as they were in the 90s. Except for
hard to say
GTR.
kasi nag-iba yung mindset eh. So like Toyota, di ba? Toyota dati had the heart eh. They had, even if they were a mainstream manufacturer, they had they produced sporty cars. They had the Celica. They had the Corolla na two-door, di ba?
The MR2.
The
MR2.
MR2, yeah.
Diba? They had those cars, then suddenly biglang nawala. Even Honda, di ba?
Yeah.
The SIR, they had the
Beat.
The Beat. Biglang nawala. Then everybody started doing cookie cutter cars, di ba? So I don't know if it's gonna come back. Maybe Toyota will, no? But kasi because of Toyota, because of their chairman now, which is a car guy by heart, si Toyota. So Akio Toyoda yata his name. He's a car guy by heart. So I actually met him personally in one of the Toyota events, and talagang he'll make you kwento about cars. He's really a car guy.
Hopefully
So,
Toyota
that's
can
why-
do something like that again.
That's why
So hopefully
he's
they
doing
would do
all
that.
these things now. So and since ayaw rin naman niya siguro exhaust yung pera ng kumpanya niya, so he started doing collaborations like the BRZ and the 86, di ba? And
Yeah, and
the
the
BMW and the Supra, di ba? The Z4 and the Supra.
Mhm.
Kasi he wants that heart back. He wants that,
Mm.
that of Toyota back. He wants to build cars again that stir the soul, that have passion, hindi lang yung cookie cutter cars.
Yeah. And
But
it's
did-
getting increasingly difficult now with all the emissions and safety requirements.
Yeah.
Global warming, stuff like that. And you transition to EV. It's getting pretty difficult.
Yeah,
So
it's hard na. Honestly,
ultimately,
it's hard.
you cannot replicate the 90s in this day and age. Pero
That's
the soul
true.
is still there.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
there's
hard na.
Pero galing
there's
nila.
still. Hello, what was that, Robert?
Naku, nagalit na naman
Sorry,
yung
natin
IT.
Naput
Nawala na naman.
Nagalit na naman yung IT.
nagalit yung IT.
What was I saying? Oh, wala na. I forgot.
Nakalimutan.
Nasira.
Nakalimutan na.
Technology cars right now. Iba na, di ba?
Iba.
Aliitan na ng makina. Di ba? Iba na ngayon eh. Tapos makikita mo yung something, di ba? Dati wala nga talaga iba.
Iba na, yes.
So I don't know
Yeah.
how it's gonna be in the future. Lalo na now with what's going on with us right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. It's
I hope
it's-
everything comes back.
yeah, hopefully everything's come back. I just read something this morning that to sort of give us a picture of how things have affected the automotive world. McLaren is selling their McLaren Center,
Their factory in
their
Woking.
factory,
Yeah.
their whole facility, so that they can. And then they also put all of their iconic cars against the loan or something like that with a bank in the UK.
Yeah.
So hopefully things do come back soon because I think the car world, I think we all need it. I definitely I miss, all of these really fun cars that are come back. But speaking of back then, I know we talked a lot about cars, and here in the Philippines, there's a lot more sort of SUVs and stuff like that, and crossovers. So I wanted to get an idea of what was yung mga SUV na uso nun, or how did the CRV and the RAV4 sort of play a role back in the 90s dito sa Pilipinas?
So let's start. You can't say SUV in the Philippines. Of course, LC80 iconic yan, but you can't say SUV and Philippines without saying Pajero.
Mm.
The boxy one, the first generation Pajero.
That was the real boxy square. Yung parang, what is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
The first gen Pajero. That was the it car, diba? If the Corolla was the mainstream car, kung social ka, Pajero yun.
Ganun
Kasi
pala
mas
yun.
expensive. The Pajero was expensive compared to the Corolla.
How much was the Pajero back then, MicMic?
Can't remember. 500 yata.
500.
The Corolla was 333.
300
The Pajero yata was 500.
Mm.
Parang ganun.
Yeah, the
So that was
Pajero.
Huh? Go
The
ahead.
Pajero was so embedded in our culture na, you know a car is part of Filipino culture if it's been used in a crime. And the Pajero, the Pajero
L3.
actually had a story in the 90s na, have you guys heard of the Pajero lady?
No. Which
No.
one? Yung kay yung ninakaw na Pajero na karnap na nahanap tapos
No. This Pajero lady is like, think of it as budol, pero she's driving a Pajero. So she would call houses in affluent villages like Green Meadow
social
or Corinthians, ganon. So like, hi, si tita ganyan-ganyan, yung relative ni ganon. May papakuha sa akin na alahas, etc. And she would always arrive in that first gen na boxy Pajero. And, dati living in Acropolis, there was a circular going around na, yun nga, this Pajero with this plate number and everything. Diba? So, medyo naging infamous siya in villages around Libis, ganyan, C5.
The Pajero lady.
Yeah.
luxury car yun. The Pajero was a luxury.
Oh, and diba, there are a lot of Mitsubishis throughout the years that have been used for crimes. Like we know the L300s, the kidnap van. From the 70s, the Celeste gang, diba?
Celeste gang.
Diba? You've got all those. And in the 90s, it was the Pajero lady.
So, anong mas popular noon? The Pajero o yung LC80?
The LC80 was never sold officially locally. So, all the LC80s were imported. So, that's why you will say the Pajero was more popular.
Was more popular.
Because it was locally produced. So, ano pa nga yan, di ba? May discrimination pa yung Pajero dahil pag yung Pajero mo low roof, wow, social low roof, imported yan, di ba? Kasi there was high roof and a low roof. Diba?
May ganun pa.
Yeah. Kasi pag low roof, that means imported yun. Hindi yun locally produced. All the locally produced ones were high roof. The first gen.
Paano yung like the CRVs? I mean, you had the big SUVs. Paano yung like the CRVs and the RAV4s? Were they around dito sa Pilipinas noong time na yun?
Yeah.
Late 90s.
The CRV came out when it came out in the States. The CRV is basically a US consumer-driven car. So, I mean, it was developed for the US.
Mm-hmm.
Honda developed that for the US. The CRV has no market in Japan. Technically, so they built that car for the US with the US in mind.
Pero dito sa Pilipinas, was it a hit?
Yeah,
back
kasi
then?
it was social. It was one of the saucy cars, CRV. It was a step up from the regular Civic and Corolla. It was more expensive.
So kung gusto mag-step up, medyo
Yeah. Kung medyo
RAV4
class ka na, kung junior executive ka na or executive ka na, let's say, sa bangko, let's say, junior vice president, CRV na yan.
Ganun pala nun. Ganun pala nun. That's nice. That's nice. Kasi yung sa amin in the US, the RAV4 and the CRVs back then really weren't ano nga, they weren't that they were popular, but really not as much as some of the bigger SUVs. Kasi in the
Yeah.
US naman, the 90s were you had nothing but these gigantic SUVs from Chevy and Dodge and things like that. So no, I mean, sa amin, never really experienced.
But kasi you lived then in the East Coast eh.
Yeah,
But in the West Coast.
iba.
Remember, if you look at the numbers, I'm not so sure of the numbers, the exact numbers, but if you look at the numbers of all the CRVs, a lot of those went to the States. A majority. The majority went to the States.
Mm.
So it
Now,
was really a car built for the US market.
No, I was
Same
sort
with
of.
the Odyssey.
The Odyssey was nice. Those are great.
Yeah.
Those are fun. Those are awesome minivans. Pero meron ako nakikita dito, Mikmik, na yung mga stories of the MX-5 of the Miata back then.
Yeah.
What was that story with how they sold those cars?
Yeah. They were given as a gift if you bought a Mazda MPV. It was a buy one, take one thing. You buy a Mazda MPV, you get a free Miata.
It's a
From
gift.
Colombian Motors.
It's a
I'm
gift.
still-
Back then.
It's a gift.
I'm still
Because-
so frustrated.
Because ironically, the Mazda MX-5 was not a good seller for
Mm.
Colombian. So they just decided to bundle it up with the MPV.
Because it wasn't priced well. It was at that
Yeah.
time I think 500.
Yeah.
Yeah, 600 pa nga ata eh.
Yeah.
It wasn't
So
priced
they
well.
just gave it away with the MPV.
Wait, the Mazda Miata was priced at about 500,000. Pero yung CRV, how was that priced? About the same?
600 plus maybe. No, kasi wait. The CRV came out late 90s na eh.
Late 90s na.
Late 90s na. So the Miata came out much earlier.
Ah,
Yeah, it
earlier
came out
pa.
around 96, 97.
Because this
And just
promo
nobody
thing
was
was
buying
in
it.
96 eh.
Hmm.
This promo
No, at
was in 96.
No, Mike, at the time kasi, there was the Mazda MPV. This
Mhm.
was, it was
That
sort
was
of
a million peso car. That
it was a million peso car.
Was it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
The MPV
Yeah,
sold here for
The
roughly
one- the
$20,000.
yeah.
Well,
More
yeah,
than a million, actually 1 point something. That's why they
Oh, wow.
That's why they could afford to give away the Miata with it. Eh.
Yeah.
Ah.
I didn't know that cost that much.
Yeah, it was expensive. The MPV was expensive.
Yeah, it was expensive and it didn't even have a clock, okay? Because we bought one.
So ayan, si Carlo Ablasa said, NA6 SRP was 750K daw.
Oh, 750K.
Yeah.
Oh, wala.
So
Crazy.
Carlo
For a-
Ablasa is one of the early Miata adopters.
$750 for a Miata back then. Wow.
That's
That was
They
expensive.
gave it away with the MPV because the MPV was 1.2 million yata back then.
No, see, I was telling us earlier that they never got his Miata. Or
Yeah,
didn't
no,
get their
'cause-
Miata.
Yeah. My dad bought an MPV and I was kind of happy
Your
about
dad might have sold it to someone.
it. Yeah, I have a feeling he did that. I could be driving a Miata.
Sa dem Miata natin. Di ba mabili ka ng MPV?
No, I was what, 7 years old, right? So I'm like, oh yay, new car, ganyan. I didn't know it came with a free Miata.
You know what
I
ironic
know,
is what's ironic now is your MPV will probably cost you 50 grand now.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
Miata is like what? 550 now, 600.
Grabe.
There was
oo.
somebody selling one for about 525.
Yeah, so
No, I
Yeah.
have a
It's
feeling. I have a feeling na my dad sold the Miata. Kasi when we got the car, he's like, "Oh, but ganon, it doesn't have a fog light, it doesn't have a clock or whatever. Oh, there's options in Japan." We literally flew to Japan to buy parts at a Mazda dealership there
For your MPV.
for our MPV. Yeah, and the only thing I got out of that trip was that was also one of the first times I saw the RX-7 again.
RX-7.
Through the
Mm.
dealership, I was peeking through the glass, diba? It's competition yellow. It's the iconic, RX-7 talaga. Apart from the one I saw in Dituazon.
So yeah, since we talked about the local car industry, no, let's say the 90s was also the boom of the local car industry. No?
Mm.
Kanina nga, we talked about it.
Aftermarket.
Toyota came back in 1989.
Mm.
Then Nissan started bringing in the new cars. No, they brought the Sentras, whatever. Then other brands came in also. So we had the Mitsubishi, we had Nissan, we had Toyota. Then Mazda came back in, di ba?
Yeah.
Mazda came back in through Colombian Motors. So they had the 323,
323.
they had the
Mm.
626, di ba?
Yeah.
Tapos, ano pa sila, yung Mazda pa was aggressive. Sila Colombian was aggressive. They even brought in Mazda Speed. The brand
Oh, they
Mazda
did.
Speed, di ba?
They had the Lantis also.
Yeah, so, tapos aside from that, who else pa? What was here pa? BMW was producing locally. The E36. In two guys.
Wait, locally
pa.
produced here?
Yeah, the E36 was
Ah.
produced in 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder. Two variants pa. 316i and the 320i. So two variants. Locally produced yun, E36.
Ayos.
Did you supply the wheels too, Mick, for the?
Yeah, for both. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
back then, Mick, just curious.
Brand
Back
to brand yun, as we talk about.
in the
Yeah, go ahead.
90s, what sort of wheels were hugely popular design-wise?
If you say, there's two, the early 90s, the late 90s. The early 90s, I would say locally, the ones that I sold, I mean, of all my design, I had the design called the Antares.
Yeah.
And that sold so well. As in, it sold so well. Not just here, but abroad also. In Australia and in Europe, I was selling a lot of those. Tapos the imported wheels naman, if you're gonna say the imported wheels, that was the era of work, diba? Of E-Wing. They called it E-Wing. Work, yung made by work, but it's called E-Wing. Tapos the Venet Vega. Yan.
Yeah.
Oy.
Yeah, that was a big deal then. Pag naka-Vega ka, wow, Vega yan, 50 million, man. Ganun. At that time, 50,000 was a lot of money. Tanda mo, yung kotse was only 330,000 pesos. Diba? So, yan.
Nice.
So those were the brands dati. Of course, BBS, ganyan. NK, meron pa rin. But back then, NK pahina. It wasn't it was not like the Vega and the EV.
Now, what other mods? Nung Robert, nung time, what year ka na, did you start getting into the car scene?
Who?
You, Robert.
What a guy.
Sorry,
Nakatingin siya doon di ba?
I know you were drinking. Pero what, di ba?
Early
All
talaga.
those drinking in the 90s na.
Yeah. Pero when did you start getting into cars? In the 90s ba? You were into cars na?
Hindi na ako sa kotse mga 90s. So, during the 90s, when the A92 came out, di ba, what I can remember is, once you got the car, you head out to Sukat, to JP Wheels.
JP Wheels.
Uy.
Your springs cut! Yun yung basic na setup.
Right. Motor springs, torno shocks.
And then, go home, you bounce. And then, we got the Ronalds and the tires then. The tire, I remember it was the Bridgestones.
Taga.
The
Nagkabit ka ng Ronalds, like the Teddies?
No.
No, the R8. The iconic Ronald of the Philippines was the R8.
Yeah.
The Pinong spokes.
Yeah, the Pina spokes. And then,
Sayang, kala ko you had Teddies back then.
i-prepare mo yun sa Bridgestones na SF350. Tama, no?
Yes, that was the
Tama
tire
yan,
na Bridgestone.
Yun yung early 90s na gulong.
SF350, yeah.
During the 80s, it was the wide ovals.
Totoo yan.
Early 90s, SF350. Yeah.
So the first mods were cut your springs and then get wheels.
And then, the thing is, after a month, you get sick of the ride. So you wake up early, dress up early, uunahan mo ng nanay mo bago umalis. So you take her car. I know. Those were the days.
What other mods were popular back then with the car scene dito sa Pilipinas?
Sounds was very
car
big.
audio, yeah. Car audio.
So the big subwoofers.
Yeah.
Hindi pa nun.
So ano pa ang uso nun, Mick?
At the start, yung big subwoofer, latter part na yan of the 90s. Pero at the start, makabili ka lang ng head unit, big deal na yon.
But
kasi remember, yung mga kotse nun, basura ang sounds nun. Well,
that's true.
Yun nga, sabi ko sa'yo, the SKD na AE92, the one that came from Japan, yung radyo nun was a Fujitsu 10 na Ditwerka pa. Yung quick, 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 ditwerka pa yung yung stasyon.
Oh my
Gumaganong-ganong
God.
pa. Di ba? So, they changed the head units.
So head units muna.
But then
Right.
the JBLs, that's 80s, no, Nick?
Yeah, late 80s yun. But it carried over up to the 90s.
90s. Then it
Nung
was
90s,
by
medyo
9s.
social na eh. MB
Yeah.
Quart, di ba? Ganyan.
Yeah, and the quart. I have those.
Rockford
pa.
Fosgate, di ba?
Yeah.
Rockford Fosgate, yun. That was huge. That was huge. Now, what
Kaya
about
you're
you?
right. Nauna talaga mo, hindi pa nauna nga pala
Mods
yung
from
mga
the
subwoofers
90s.
noon.
Bosina! Yan.
6x9s
Bosina.
muna pala. 6x9s muna and then yun na when
6x9.
Interpine came, ayan na yung mga subs.
So later na yung mga
I guess
subwoofers.
the sub naging ngayon 94 siguro, you would say 94, 93, 94 ganun.
Yeah.
Latter mga 94, 95 naging mainstream locally yata yun.
Yes.
Hindi ako masyado into car audio but I guess I would say ganun.
Doon nagboom ang Banawe. Audio.
Yeah, you have a lot of the OG audio shops sa Banawe.
Yeah.
Tama.
So before nun, hindi ganun kaano yung Banawe. That wasn't the place to go. Pero until na
No, it was.
sounds
It
na.
was.
It
Even
it was pa.
from the
was.
70s pa.
Mm.
Banawi was
Ah.
Banawi na.
Okay.
Kami car audio wise.
If you wanted Momo, Banawi yan. Kailangan mo magpalit ng busina, Banawi yan.
Banawe.
That was the place
Banawi
to
yan.
go na.
Remember,
back then
during
pa.
the 70s kasi, cars were stripped. During, of course, hindi na to 90s, but as a backstory nga, how Banawi came about. During the 70s, walang side mirror yung kotse. Bumili ka ng kotse, walang side mirror. As soon as you get out of the casa, pupunta ka sa Banawi para magka-side mirror yung kotse.
Oh, really?
Ganun?
Yeah, there was no side mirrors. Yeah.
So sila pala yung MSO.
Alam mo ba yung DX, 'di ba? The Corolla DX, 'di ba? Yung
Yes.
dalawa yon, DX and GL.
Yes.
Yung DX walang seatbelt yon, yung GL
Oh
lang
my
meron,
God.
yung 5-speed. Ganong ka bare ang mga kotse dati. So that's why Banawi was such
And they were
Kasi
selling
you had-
these brand new.
Huh?
They were selling these brand new parts na. Oh yeah, kasi it was brand new cars.
Yeah, you had to buy a side mirror. So that's why dati when you had kunyari, you bought a Lancer backside, 'di ba? Nauso yung Murakami mirrors,
Yes.
latter part na
Ayan,
ng backside.
Murakami.
Pero before that, nung wala pa yung mga Murakami, the early backside, sa mga binibili niya, mga Vitaloni, ganyan, Hagus, yung mga those brands.
So it was aftermarket, not OEM.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was aftermarket.
Ganun. So these are
Kasi nga super bare ng kotse nun.
Okay. But then, are these generic or car specific parts?
Some were generic, some were car specific.
Kung ano lang yung magkasya.
At the latter part of kasi when the 90s came out, yun nga, that was the first time na yung kotse medyo kompleto na. When the Corolla 16 van, the EE92 came out, that's why people wanted it kasi kompleto na. Meron, more or less kompleto na. It had side mirrors, it had aircon. Yeah, that was a big deal. Biro mo, you buy a brand new car, walang aircon, you had to go pa somewhere to make pakabit your aircon. Di ba? So, that was a big deal na when you get it from the casa, may aircon na. Wow, okay to, may aircon na. So, that was
Big
the 90s.
time. 90s na yun. Ayos. What about you, When did you start getting, because like I said, you and I are a little bit of a different generation. When did you start getting into cars?
Well, my first word was car, okay? So no, I'm not even kidding. You can quote my mom on that. So growing up, in the 90s, it was always I'd get yung mga Tomicas or Hot Wheels, right?
Mhm.
And then for literature, my parents would bring me some, Car and Driver, Road and Track magazines.
Mhm.
So that's how I'd be exposed to the international,
Car scene.
car scene with what's happening with I don't know, at the time there were already articles about the Dodge Viper, Ferrari Testarossa, stuff like that, But like getting really immersed into the car culture was not till my teens. So this was past the 90s already. So I'm one of those kids that grew up from Gran Turismo, okay? So straight up from simulation. I'd even go to the arcades. There was an arcade game of Initial D, so that's the one I really went heavy into, and that's how I knew all about the JDM stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's also kind of what fueled my interest in the RX-7. And then, yun, throughout the 2000s naman, yun, I'd be exposed to and you go to the trans shows, you go to car meets, ganyan. And then at the time, my first car was a Honda Civic FD, right? So medyo full circle. I came from an FD and now I'm driving another FD.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, in the mid 2000s, that's when I kind of started, kumbaga, getting to know the people behind the cars, right? So that kind of gave me the blueprint or the idea of what a proper car meet should be. So you'd go to events like back in the day, yung mga yabangan nights nila JDM Underground, when they were still taking over Green Hills and Krispy Kreme, diba? So you'd go to events like that and see na, oh, people have a lot of clean cars around town. It would be nice to gather them together, diba?
Yeah.
And then, you join car clubs, ganyan. I met Rafi in Subaru Society and stuff like that. So you kind of get a feel of what people want. And one day, after getting the RX-7 and ganyan, and suddenly we just up and realized kami nila Robert and sila Marco and Ryan, our co-founders. Like, you know what? We all have 90s cars. Why don't we gather everyone up and call for a meet, diba? Because at the time you had meets. The staple meets were sila Stans Pilipinas, and that's kind of the melting pot of local car culture, because they don't just welcome the Stans cars, they welcome everything talaga.
Yeah.
And we wanted to make a meet with a theme, so all 90s, and surprisingly everyone kind of jumped in on that. Everyone's into it because by the time I had my RX-7, and I'm pretty sure a whole generation of kids my age are old enough to be driving the cars they want out of Gran Turismo.
Right.
So you'd see guys in Skyline GTRs na nagtatago, di ba? Like out of nowhere, there's a BNR 34 na sobrang buo. Out of nowhere, there's a Supra, a really clean Silvia. And the other obscure cars, like kami nila Robert, we'd be really, really surprised every time there's a meet, because there's always a wild card that will show up. Like a car you will not expect. Like our last meet, one of those photos, there was a Ferrari Testarossa at the meet.
Was that the one that was that slammed or no?
No, that's stock. And it made it all the way up to the rooftop of Unimart. Well, yeah. Diba? So you have cars like these, and we're just really doing Legends of the 90s kasi we are also interested in these cars. We love this era, and we want to see everyone together appreciating all those cars. Well, of course, we kind of want the quality ones, diba?
Yeah.
So if you're going to join the event, you better have something, worth presenting. Kumbaga, we want a full showcase of all that's great with the 90s.
So there's a criteria if you want to show up and show your car.
Well, ano kasi, it really depends on your car. Kunwari, if you have a Honda Civic, let's face it, there are thousands of you, right? So if you're going to bring a Honda Civic to the meet, you better bring something special with it. So kunwari, if you declare that your Civic is a full spoon build, it better be full spoon, because we have guys. We have like maybe 5-6 guys na OG talaga yung setup. As in sagad. All the way down to the rare tow hooks and the signatures of Ichishima and shit. It's all there. We have guys coming in with EGs na full Mugen and the really rare yellow gathers interior na naka-cover pa with clear covers and everything preserved. So, if you have a common car, you better step up to the plate, diba? If you have a good build, it has to be bring your best bakal.
Yeah.
But we give leniency in terms of, diba, rarity. If, say, there was one guy who brought in, there's a lot of rare cars, eh. So, and one of the photos is, Pajero Evo, diba?
There are a lot of rare cars.
Oh, diba? If it's really rare, we'll give you a pass if it's in somewhat it has to be presentable pa rin, di ba?
Yeah.
Pero if it's not perfect, okay lang. Because we want to see it also. So we have people bringing in Nissan Stadia, Nissan Pulsar. We actually have, I mean, between the co-founders, we actually have a list of cars that we're expecting. Yung parang secret na namin yun, pero we want to see at the meets. So, yung mga ganon, like we're looking for cars talaga na, oh, come on, pasok niya yan, ganyan. So we've had all the JDM greats now. We've had 3000 GTs, NSXs, Supras. RX-7s are obviously a staple because I'm always there.
Because you're always there.
Diba? And we have thankfully the Skyline GTR club is also always backing us up. So these days, kompleto na sila, 32s, 33s, 34s. They have that covered. Diba? Pero we're always surprised with what's pulling up to the entrance.
With the Legends of the 90s, you guys aren't like restricted to like Japanese cars, right? Anything from the 90s.
No.
US, Euro.
No, we want to see the Euro. So there was one event a couple years back na our unicorn for the night was a BMW 850i. Yeah. So the V12 one.
Yeah, the V12 one. Those things were massive.
Yeah, we were surprised that the guy brought it to the meet. It was like, oh shit, it's an 850i. Pop the hood, everything, 12 cylinders.
Yeah.
Oh shit, this is taking the unicorn for the night.
Yes.
Nice.
Oh,
And what
so
other
it's-
cars are sort of I know you said you guys have a list. Is there can you share what kind of cars are on
Syempre, you have the unobtainables, the impossible ones, like the Ferrari F40, Jaguar
Mhm.
XJ220, stuff like that. Pero one of the cars that we haven't had at the meets ever since, and this is really a long shot, pero it's possible, is we want someone to bring in an Isuzu Vehicross.
I've seen one.
Diba? There are a few around town.
Yeah, I've seen one. Yeah. Mga Cargayan cars meron.
Yeah. They're ugly as hell, but we really
mukhang
want to see
sapatos.
one at the meets.
Oh, these things.
Yung mukhang
Yeah,
looks
yeah.
like a
Yes,
Nike
these things
shoe.
are ugly.
But they're the quirkiest cars ever. So we don't exactly want to see all the glitz and glamour, diba? We
Right.
think Legends of the 90s is all JDM, ganyan. No,
Yeah.
we embrace everything that's unique and weird about the 90s. You bring a Buick Roadmaster or something.
Yeah.
We don't care, diba? As long as we don't see it often. Like we have,
di ba? Remember the
see Franco.
yeah.
Si Attorney Frank, diba? He brought his Chevy Caprice and his Volvo 240 wagon. In both pristine condition. Diba? Great. Welcome aboard.
Nice. Yeah, that Vehicross was ugly, but I had an uncle who had one. Those were
If he still has it, tell him to bring it over.
those
I
were
want
unique cars. Those were
Pero I've seen one locally. I've seen siguro two locally. On the
yeah.
roads lang.
I've seen a couple.
that
So
would be
it's not
impossible.
impossible, yeah.
Diba? It's
Problema
not
lang kasi the
impossible.
owner might not be into cars.
Yan na nga eh.
Mm.
But yeah, you
Kasi
you
for
find
you to buy a
usual-
V-Cross, that means hindi ka mahilig sa kotse to begin.
I think it was the Nissan Juke.
Sorry baka may magalit sa akin.
If you have a Isuzu Vehicross out there, let us know.
Yep, we'd love to see that.
Yeah.
We'd love to see that. Well, we're almost at 2 hours mark time. I'd like to finish off with sort of what cars from the 90s would you guys be sort of, I think would be the perfect car to buy now, restore it, and keep it for the rest of your time.
May presyo. I mean,
Let's
still obtainable na tataas ang
let's
presyo.
how about let's do two. One is obtainable and one is just for your dream. Something that you can-
Obtainable 190 2.316. It's still obtainable now, and I'm sure the prices are gonna go up.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's one of my picks.
And what about one that no money, no budget type of thing?
Of course, the supercars, the exotics, F1.
F1.
Yeah,
That would be
but ano na yun? I mean, impossible. Yeah. So let's just talk about the obtainable. Ako,
Oo nga.
one of them is the 190 2.360. Because the M3 prices have already skyrocketed.
Yeah.
Yeah. The M3s are getting really, really expensive now.
I guess I think I have a gut feel na the 190 2.316 will follow.
What
Kayo,
about
who
you, Al?
else pa?
Go, wow. What about you?
Sige. Obtainable project car. Like if you want to start something 90s ngayon and may dating pa. Because, guys, let's face it, SIRs are dime a dozen and they're going 500,000? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So medyo cookie cutter na to go with a bone stock SIR. Like it's a great car. Everyone else thinks it's great too. But if you want to inject a little more personality and start with something with the same price range, I would recommend the Miata MX-5 talaga. 'Cause,
Also.
yeah,
Totoo yan.
Should have had.
MPV.
there's a thriving community here naman to help you
So
build
later
your car.
you'll ask your dad, what happened to the Miata?
Oh, di ba? Exactly.
Sayang
Nakita
yun,
ko may
Al.
libreng Miata yan.
Sayang
Ay, nako.
yun. Oh,
So yeah, Miata talaga, it's got a good globally, it's got a good following. So you could easily find parts here and there. There's a community here and a couple
and if I'm not
specialists.
mistaken, Mazda is opening up a catalog parts
They
bin
have a
again,
heritage program.
Yeah,
Yes.
meron na.
that you can buy brand new
parts.
Miata parts. And there's a lot you can
Yeah.
do. I mean, that's for at least back in the US, a lot of guys would ditch their expensive cars and pick up a Miata because you can stuff a V8 in it if you really wanted to.
Oh yeah. Sila
Um,
flying Miata.
Flying Miata.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
parts are they're relatively cheap.
Yeah, and
for
the beauty
Miata.
of the Miata is you just get in and drive, diba?
Yeah,
Unlike
exactly.
the RX-7, I'd always have to pray and see if, hope it doesn't die on me, diba? Lagi
Yeah,
nangyayari
that's-
yan, but
Miata. I mean, there's
Yeah.
a few years ago, back in 2017, when I first moved back here, I was looking at some online. You can pick them up back then at about 200, 225. And now
Yeah.
I'm seeing one that's about 4, 5.
there's
depending on the
enough
condition.
of a quantity of Miatas here na the question is yung quality of car because you have some B plate entries also, so those are the 200 range cars. And
Okay.
of course it's been converted from right to left hand drive. So what the people really go for are the mint local version Miatas.
How much would they go
So-
for? Oh.
Yeah, that's what those are priced in the 400s, 500s depending on condition.
Pag
Yeah.
makinis, 550, ganyan.
Yeah.
525.
Yeah.
Which I
But
think
still-
is, I mean, that's a lot. That is a lot for a Miata. But I mean,
It-
now it's
it
a
is.
rare car.
Actually,
it
si
is, but when
Rafi,
you consider
yung
when you
sister
consider
niya
the
had
headache of having to fix a 200,000 peso car versus a 500,000 peso car, you just go with a more expensive one.
Si
Yeah.
Rafi, yung sister niya had the first gen 1800.
Oh, yeah.
And
Local-
sold it
locally
fairly
only.
cheap. Sold it fairly cheap. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was
US
around
version.
300.
Oh.
And it had low miles
First
too, if I'm
gen
not mistaken.
1800. That's, I mean, kasi the 1600, of course, marami yon. But the 1800 was konti lang.
Yeah. And most of the Miata guys consider that an upgrade locally to bump up to the 1800. Changes the car.
What about you, Robert? Car to buy now, restore and to keep.
I'll choose the Daihatsu Feroza. Actually, nasa list ko yun. Di ba, Aw?
Oh, nasa lista yun.
Waiting
Nasa
for
lista
the
yun.
Feroza.
Feroza is on the list also.
Tapos lagyan mo ng 1UZ. No?
Yun.
I've seen one eh. A
Yeah.
Feroza with a 1UZ.
Raul.
Well, honestly, Atino siguro GT4, Celica.
Isa pa yun.
Mm.
Yeah.
Tapayal.
Isa pa yun. Tama.
What
Kasi
made that car
everybody's talking
special?
about Evos eh, ha?
Yeah, what made that car special? I mean, because that was, we never got it in the US. What made that car just, I mean,
World Championship winner yun, no?
That was the car that cheated WRC and got Toyota.
Yeah, later. Championship winner yun.
Infamous.
the
No, the
infamous.
the second generation one was the cheater. Pero the first one, hindi.
The first one really won straight up.
Yung wedgie one, yung wedge type
Yeah.
one was, yeah.
The first gen was the pop-up headlights.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yung 195, if I'm not mistaken.
ST19. 185. ST185.
185 pala.
The cheater was what? The 205.
Oh yeah, maybe the 205 or the
One-
195. I can't remember. Basta yung bilugan na yung cheater.
Yeah, yung quad
Mm.
lamp na.
The one
Yun
I
yung
want.
cheater.
Actually, the one I want.
The one.
Yun, isa pa yun. Isa pang okay yun. Kasi everybody's
Yeah.
talking about Subarus, everybody's talking about Evos, pero yung Celica is medyo still, attain na But
Yeah,
yun nga,
it is.
the numbers are so small rin. It's so hard to
That's
find.
that's the only problem. You'll have to convert it to a GT4, malamang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to convert a 202 to a 205, di ba? Because you need to
Kasi
have
the floor is
actual
different.
fuel tank,
Yeah.
everything.
You have to find a
The floor is
donor car.
different.
Oh,
Ganyan din.
donor car talaga na 205 kailangan.
Actually, yung
They
choice
only
ko
made that
pala
limited
mali.
numbers naman, di ba?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Pardon
Yung
me?
mali pala, the 190 was technically an 80s car. 88 yun. So, I should find something na 90s.
Really, they didn't make that many of the GT4, right?
No, not so much.
Or not so much.
That's
They
what I think.
never sold it kasi mainstream eh. Yun
Yeah,
ang
because that
problema.
was, I don't think we ever got that in the US, if I'm not mistaken. We got the
They
front
never
wheel drive
sold it
version.
mainstream.
Yeah. For me,
Because-
I would still
No,
no. If I
the
can,
US came with the all-track. There was a Celica all-track. The first
Oh, really?
Gen 1. Yeah.
Ah,
they
yeah,
sold
yung
it in the
185
States,
had the all
The
track.
wedge.
Yeah.
the pop-up headlights one, but not the
which is
not
the
the round
GT4.
headlights.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So they sold it in the States, the all-track.
Mm.
So what
For
else?
me, if I had to pick a car to restore, and I know this is like what Al said, a lot of the Honda boys, you can't really unique it, but for me, I still want the dream car for me is still an EK9. But I know to find one in pristine condition would just be, it's just impossible. You can't
Dude,
find one that's
Ang hirap na.
used and abused.
I wonder where my EK9 is now. If somebody knows WKS 277, if somebody knows where it is,
Make will buy it back.
I might, but it depends. Yeah. But kasi that engine was also a really good. That was mine was stroked eh. Tapos it had Toda pistons, Toda cams lahat.
Oh,
When I
wow.
sold it.
Oh wow.
Again, the computer box was from Mieda also. Crazy Sports. Yes.
So Mick, back then in the 90s, you had just a lot of awesome cars.
Oh,
Right? The
kasi
Richard
I had
Burns
the job and
cars.
I had money. I had a job that was paying me so I could buy the cars. That's why it was also a golden era for me. I was single and I had the job.
So back then, if you kept all of your cars into one garage, I mean, you would just have a museum of amazing cars from the 90s.
My first car, I went to the States kasi in 93 and 95. Tapos, for me to study there, my dad bribed me with a BMW. So, sabi niya, pag mag-aaral ka sa America, I'll buy you a BMW. Okay. So, he bought me an E36 na 325i. But, and as luck would have it, that car, kasi we bought that from the kasi back then I was looking for a 92 kasi I was planning to bring it home to the Philippines. So I wanted it sana na by the time na makauwi ako in 95 kasi nga I was gonna be a returning resident because I was gonna study there. Mababa na ng konti yung tax, so I was looking for a 92. So we bought the car 92 from the BMW motor pool. So nagkataon, the car was the car they showed in, I think, the New York Auto Show and something. It was their launch car. It was built by Alpina.
Wow.
So so eventually the paperwork came in, ganyan. Tapos the VIN was super low, as in like the VIN was 0000044. It was a super low build car. Tapos it was built by Alpina kasi nga BMW didn't have a car yet to show sa New York. So they asked Alpina to build them that US car. It was a US spec car. Na since the factory wasn't ready for it yet, they asked Alpina to build it for them. Then it was shipped to the States. So I eventually had paperwork from Alpina saying that we built this car and that we'll recognize it as Alpina, whatever. So that was one of the cars. Then when I came home from the States in 95, I had no car. So nagkataon na what they call this, one of our dealers in Banawe hindi makabayad. So, ang nangyari na sheriff namin yung kanyang Lancer na itlog. So, yun ang first car ko dito. Ang pangit. Super pangit talaga. Dologs pa lahat. Kasi kung ano-ano mga nakalagay, ganyan. So, I had it repainted, then I converted it into an MR, Lancer MR. So,
Mm.
na itlog. So all the emblems were MR, everything was MR. Then in 96 I bought Civic VTI. So the usual started with bolt-ons, started
Yeah.
with springs, whatever, ganyan, intake, Iceman intake, the back then, so whatever. Tapos I built it with the help of Reggie Singa of Speedwell Batted. So I built it into EK4, a real full-fledged EK4. So everything was EK4. I even had the glass with the rear wiper.
Oh wow.
So
Nice.
tapos it was a B16A. Then I eventually bought one of the engines of the Ramirez's from their EF9 na 1800 na built by Mieda na Tracy rin. So it became a B16A with an 1800 stroker. Tapos it had cams, ganyan, Toda cams, whatever. So then I moved up into the EK9. I was luckily enough offered by Mieda a nice EK9, a really nice EK9, then I got it.
Wow. So you just
Then
had
I
someone just
converted it using a local crashed na VTI. Na I got the firewall, got the dashboard, whatever. Got whatever I get to convert it to an EK9.
so you really had just a nice assortment of cars back in the
Yeah.
90s.
Tapos after that, nagkaroon na ng Subaru. Si Reggie kasi we started na going to Subarus. Tapos
Yeah.
yun, so in 99 or before the 2000s, I was able to get that STI. That STI
Richard
version
Burns.
2 RA, which
Oh,
Robert
oh,
knows
okay.
na pumunta nga kay Dan V at the time, WHF 482. Tapos, at the same time, I also had the legacy na BG5 station wagon GT build style twin turbo.
The BG5 was the one with the muta, right? No.
Hindi.
Or that.
Same one as Jams. Same yung kay Jam Jimenez. That one.
Okay. Okay.
BG5.
So, I don't know I can't remember the plate number of that nung BG5. But lumabas nag-surface. I sold it to Jigs Hermano eh. Then Jigs sold it to Ferman Lau. Then it surfaced in Subic eh. Now it's with Makoy.
Almazora? Almazon? The big guy.
Yeah, he's but it's with him now. So that's a twin turbo na legacy. With everything, I swapped everything done. So even the aircon controls of that is digital lahat.
Oh, wow.
Of all of your 90s cars, that's not with you anymore. What would you want?
And the rally car pa na Richard Burns yun.
Yun yung gusto mong itago pa sana.
Yeah, I would if regretting selling that one.
The
The
Richard
Richard
Burns
Burns car.
I would
I
too.
regret selling that. Well, nasa kilala naman natin, so it's okay lang. But I regret selling that.
Okay.
Well, with that said, I'd like to thank you guys
Tapos
for
na?
your
Wala
yeah.
na? What?
What?
Wala, we
tayo
haven't
2
talked about
hours eh.
Rafi yet. We have to talk about Rafi.
Di pa natin napag-usapan si Rafi eh.
Oh my.
There's so
Okay,
many.
How was Rafi during the 90s?
Yeah, there you go. MicMic would know. I wouldn't
Big
know.
time yan, pare. When we were
Ayaw.
driving mga Civics, he was in a Porsche.
Oh!
Wow.
So big time yan.
What a
What a
guy.
guy.
Diba?
Pag
What a
bigla
guy.
tayo nawala, ibig sabihin, alam na natin what happened.
Pinutol na tayo. But yeah, he was one of the guys I knew na naka magandang kotse na back then. I mean, all of us, of course, I had the Civic, I had the E36, but he had the Porsche. Kahit ano sabihin mo, Porsche yun.
Yeah,
He had the 944.
nice. Which
Wow.
those things are going up in value too. The 944 turbos.
Yep.
They're starting to creep up. Yeah, they're starting to creep up. Yeah. With that said, I just want to thank you guys for.
One more question.
Sige. Hindi natin ito papaalisin. No?
Where would Rafi?
Oo. Meron pa tayong 42 viewers eh.
Wala na. IT ni Robert nagalit na. I don't know. Robert, IT
Wala
mo.
na nga yata si Robert.
Yeah.
Oo nga, yan o, nag-freeze na nga si Robert eh.
IT ni Robert nagalit na.
Galit na yung IT.
Oh yeah, Robert, what was your last
Ayan,
question?
ayan, bumalik
Yeah.
na.
Yun. Where would Rafi hang out during the 90s?
Oh!
Hang out.
Si Robert nagtanong niya, hindi ako.
Ewan ko. Venetia maybe? Venetia or Mars maybe? Maybe ha.
Pero back
Kasi
then,
si-
Mick, you guys knew
Ha?
each other na. You guys knew each other na back then in the 90s.
I knew Rafi pero I wasn't close to him then.
Mm.
But I have people who are close to me that were already close to Rafi. Like one of them was Norman Artificio, who was Rafi's, I think, supervisor in SM Aka. Kasi Rafi used to work for SM Aka,
Okay.
the car dealership na SM Aka. So they were selling Volkswagen, Audi
Mm.
back then. Volkswagen, Audi, and Mazda yata also. Yan. So
Ayos,
Norman
ayos.
Artificio. Norman also karted. Also went karting and also raced in Corolla Cup. Ay, biro mo, we forgot to talk about the motorsports. Sayang. Biro mo,
We'll
back
We
then
have to
there
do
was racing in BGC. I don't know if you knew that, but
BGC now?
yeah. There was one race in BGC, street course. So Fifth Avenue, that was the straight. That was the what is Fifth Avenue now was the straight.
Oh, wow.
Wow!
What year was this, Mick?
I think 96,
96.
Back
95
then,
or 96.
obviously, walang masyading buildings sa BGC noon.
Wala pa.
Wala. It was
Wala, lupa lang yun.
Okay.
flat.
But there was already the fort. They called it the fort.
The strip.
No, not even the strip. Yung apat sila dati, the fort where is now, where embassy is now, what's that, K-pub, something Korean, and that was used to be called the fort. That was where the grandstand was.
Mm.
Yeah.
What
So
bar
there
was
was a race there. Ha? Ano ba yun? What
What
bar was that?
there? Because
Robert? You know, doon ka tumatambay, di ba?
Fat with
Kasi dati it was Big Boys yata. There was a restaurant called Big Boys or something like that. No. Basta it was 4 restaurants. They called the fort. The fort.
Nawawala ng...
Nawawala na naman si Robert.
Nagagalit na yung IT niya.
Nagagalit na yung IT. Sign na yan.
Ay, nako.
Ano yan? Kagimikan ko yan ng late 90s.
Okay. Late night. Yun nga, there was racing in the fort then. So there was one race in the fort.
Before, just question na, before the like, Clark and Batangas Raceway, where was the actual circuit racing taking place? Subic?
Subic and Batangas.
Subic.
Subic was a year older than Batangas.
So halos
Subic is
magkasabay lang
hallowed
sila.
ground talaga for Philippine motorsports.
Subic.
Pero maraming hindi na nakakita doon sa original Subic. The original Subic was a really nice track. Unfortunately, during the late 90s, nabawasan yun eh. Lumiit na yung Subic. Then it became unsafe na because it was so skinny na, then it's all walls na. But the original Subic track was really nice.
Someone said, anybody remember the drag strip at MOA? Even before the actual SM MOA was built.
Yeah. It was near the
Makapagal ba yun?
Yeah. Kasi that was PDRF, di ba?
Yes.
Makapagal din. Ang alam ko drag strip yung sa sa Libis.
Oh yeah, Libis.
Yeah, so what is now C5?
Libis tsaka White Plains. White Plains minsan meron din.
Yeah, but White Plains lumipat sa Libis after a while.
Yeah,
Yung 90s na sa Libis na.
Yeah.
And Lagro for some reason.
Oh.
Yeah, but I was not into drag racing, so of course I watched, no? But I wasn't into drag racing. I was more into circuit.
Mostly circuit racing.
Circuit talaga.
Yeah, because
Alright,
it was
guys.
also before we go na kwento na natin yung because it was the golden age, no. Biro mo, there was nauso yung run what you brung, di ba? So you can bring your car to the track, di ba? Yan. Nauso yun. So, sila Ramirez made that pakana na you bring your card and you run it. Then there was brackets. So you didn't have to compete with the faster cards. You had brackets. There was Class A, Class B, Class C, Class D. So there were brackets. So it
So at
was
least it would
fun.
be a fair match.
Yeah,
They made
and
it-
it was
they
fun.
made it-
You know?
Sorry. They made it very accessible to everybody.
Yes, they did. Yes.
So noon talaga. This would be what, late 90s,
Mid 90s,
mid 90s drag racing.
96, ganyan.
Yep.
Was it
Yung
more people
circuit
going to
racing.
the circuit or the drag? Ano mas
It's hard
uso?
to say kasi naman the circuit. Pero kasi bira mo, we forgot to mention AFOS eh. There was a time
Yeah.
that the foreigners would come in to race here in Subic. They called it the Asian Festival of Speed, di ba?
Mm.
So tapos the mga works cars were here, di ba? The mga BMW of sila ano yun, yung sa Hong Kong,
Mark
yung
Goddard.
Watsons yung nakalagay sa kotse, di ba? Watsons, yan. Tapos the works cars were here, di ba? Toyota Team Thailand, Natabud, di ba? Talagang they were racing here locally. We were part of the calendar. We were part of the ATCC, Asian Touring Car Championships. We were part of that calendar. And it ended in Macau. The last race was always Macau.
Mm. I've got a question from Billy here. Ask Mick who Ferdy is. Yung legend.
Ferdy Ong was my driver for Rota in the 90s. He eventually became the clerk, of course, for Tuason, for the Vios Cup. So legend siya, yeah, because he's a character. Let's just say he's a character. But I must admit, I've grown. I've been with Ferdy from the start, from his slalom days up to we beat the works team. We beat the Toyota Team Toms. Ferdy beat the Toyota Team Toms for the championship. Our ragtag team, we were misfits. Then we beat the factory team, the Toms factory team, for the championship. What, in 2000 or 2001? I can't remember.
This is what class or what series?
Super Saloon and
Super Saloon.
PNTCC, both PNTCC and Super Saloon.
Wow. This is that 92 coupe that you were saying.
No, we were using a Civic na.
Civic.
Ferdy gave up on the 92 coupe, on the AE 92 coupe after 1 year. Kasi pare, talaga di namin kaya yung mga
Civic.
So we went to the Civics after. I think we were racing the AE 92 in 96 or 97 yata, something like that. Then we gave up on it. We went to the Civic the year after.
Civic. Iba talagang Civic. That's
Yeah.
All right, you guys ready, guys? Because I think
Sige na.
I will shout out to Denmark Dolores. I know he's hopefully you feel better, so shout out to you. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for spending your Friday or Saturday evening with us. Hopefully you guys had fun. I know for me, again, the 90s were hugely important in the way I look at and see cars. Any final words from you guys? Any shout outs? Any sort of do you guys want to say, wishes or anything to anybody out there? Robert, you want to say what's up to all of your Grupo Toyota friends and family?
Yeah. Hi to my Grupo Toyota family and thank you to my IP tonight. I love you very much.
What about you, Al? Any shout outs out there for you?
Yeah, shout out to my buddies Ace at the Car Enthusiasts. Hello. And yung builder natin, si Lito Salva. Thank you for keeping my RX-7 running. Thank you very much. And of course, to you guys in Fixed Up, thank you for taking care of the suspension end of the car. At least maasahan kayo really close by, no? So yeah, hope you guys call me back again for another podcast like this.
Definitely. Hey, we need to do a video on your car. I always see your car. It's one of the highlights.
One of these days when it's at the shop again.
Yeah. Well, let's definitely do a video of your car. I love seeing that car around. And what about you, MicMic? Do you want to say hi or anything?
Thank you. I mean, I'd like to thank the ones that buy my wheels, that buy Rota, Patronize Rota. Thank you very much. And of course, shout out to the living legend of the 90s, si Rafi David.
Yes.
Our boss.
So again, thank you guys so much. And one thing I definitely want to do is we know we need to make a video on Rhoda because they really have some amazing wheels in the process that they go through to make their wheels fantastic. Is just beyond what a lot of people think that they are. So they are
Proudly
fantastic
Filipino
wheels.
made.
What's
Yep.
that?
Yes.
Yeah, support local. So again, thank you guys so much for staying tuned this evening. It was a pleasure talking cars again with these guys. Especially Mick just has so much stories and knowledge to share.
Chismis.
Well, he's lived it all, you know. So again, thank you guys so much, and we will definitely see you guys next Saturday. Next Saturday we're going to be talking about fun runs and the various routes. Where you can take nice road trips and nice drives here in Manila. So we'll see you guys then. Have a pleasant evening. We'll see you guys next Saturday.